Hello and welcome to Mulch, with me your host Rebecca Anning Brown. This is a weekly podcast for flower farmers who want to build a confident flower farming practice that reflects the lifestyle that you want now and in the future. Each week I'll share conversation and tips to nurture and grow you and your flower farm. I'll open conversations that flower farmers find difficult to talk about, provide approaches that will help you to make decisions, chuckle at the idiosyncrasies of our work, and always be real and honest about my own work as a flower farmer. My goal is to help you to grow a curious, confident and grounded flower farming practice that flourishes as a business that you love and are proud to shout about. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and if you like what you hear, please do leave a review and share the podcast with your flower farming friends. It really does help to grow a confident and successful flower farming community.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Mulch. It is the last week in June. We are past the summer solstice and it is, I was going to say downhill all the way now to Christmas, but I don't mean downhill. I just mean that the day lengths get shorter. Please forgive me for putting it in that way. As ever, I never know what Anthony's going to leave in when he edits this. So if you hear it, forgive me. If you don't, you won't hear this bit either. How are you? The sun is out. Hurrah! The sun is out. I mean, the slugs are still present, but the sun is out. The ground is warming up. The dahlias are starting to do something interesting, as are the rest of the half-hardy annuals. And it feels like, well, certainly here in Yorkshire, the annuals have gone, oh, I was supposed to flower like 3 months ago. I'm going to flower now. Every one of them in one go, which is both brilliant and frustrating, as you might imagine. But good. Yeah, flowers are good. We've got flowers. I certainly can't complain. I really hope the sunshine is out wherever you are, that you have mastered the technique of the slug pick and throw, and that you're getting some time in the evenings or early mornings to enjoy this kind of warmer weather whilst it lasts. It's a big week here at Silver Grey Foliage. We are announcing or launching all of our courses at the back end of this week. They will take us through from autumn through winter and just about touching early spring 2025. I know. That is a long way away. But time seems to fly incredibly quickly in the flower farming world. So, we are reaching our fingertips out to the other side of Christmas. As much as anything else, it means that you can plan where and when and how you join us. If you are interested in working with us so that you can increase your productivity, increase the profit that you make in your flower farm, or just so that you can get better at what you do and do it with more confidence. And I say just, I hate the word just almost as much as I hate the word should, because it seems to kind of prefix so much of the terminology and phraseology of the 21st century. But it's not just gain confidence in what you do, because in reality, when you have that confidence, you just get on with it. So it's possibly the most important thing that we can help you with. Anyway, there is a mailing list. I haven't sent anything on this mailing list yet because I don't have anything to tell you, but I will do by the end of the week. And so if you want to be on that mailing list, which is solely for the purpose of our workshops and courses over the back end of this year into 2025, then click on the link in the show notes. It's a double sign up. That means that we're not going to send you any spam, but you also have to confirm that you actually want to hear from us. To do that, when you have filled in your information, there's just a couple of bits of information, you need to go to your email address. You need to find the automatic email from MailerLite that will either be in your inbox or in your junk, and you need to click on it to tell MailerLite that you do want to hear from us and it's not just me signing you up for fun. That is not something that I personally would do. But it's really important to me that I know that I'm only sending information to people who actually want to hear from us. Otherwise, I really don't want to waste your time. All right. I feel like we are heading into what most people would call the busiest part of their year as a flower farmer. Now, that's mainly because it's the busiest cutting period of the year. But I'd absolutely argue that our busiest time here at Silver Grey Foliage is actually autumn, because we are in full cutting mode in autumn. It's one of our kind of peak parts of season. We're heading into the winter months when we cut foliage. Again, that's a peak season for us here at Silver Grey Foliage. And we're getting things in the ground so that they are comfortable, happy, warm and ready for the winter before it comes. For me, I think that autumn is the busiest time of the year, but I would love to know your responses to that. When is your busiest time of the season? Before I go off on too much of a tangent, there's a reason that I wanted to just highlight the busyness around this time of the year. Because today we're talking about investment crops. Now, before I explain what these are and how to choose them or how we go about choosing them, I really want you to know why I'm talking about them now in June, when most of us have got our heads down to cut and get through to the end of the season. So I'm talking about it now because whilst I agree that right now you're not necessarily thinking about it, you're thinking about your summer holidays, the busiest part of the year, this busy season, is also when you earn the most money. Oh, I'm going to say that again. We don't like using the M word. The busiest part of the season is also when you earn the most money. And if it's when you earn the most money, it's also when you can put the most money aside towards whatever you want to invest in over autumn and winter for next season. So I'm talking about it now because I want the thought of investment to be percolating through your brain so that you keep your eyes on what you're spending. And instead of buying those toys that would be nice, or a few of these or a few of those, I really want you to focus on that investment crop for next year. Those things that you spend your money on because you know that they're going to reap rewards time and time again. Now, my friend Susie, I think I'm actually going to blame every single episode that I do on Susie. But my friend Susie and I were talking today, and the concept of investment came up. I kind of put my hand up and went, Susie! Like, I'm ahead of you. I've done a podcast all about this. So I hope she's listening. And if Susie is just my imaginary friend, I hope that you guys enjoy the rest of this episode and find it useful. Okay, let's crack on. What is an investment crop? Well, I define an investment crop as having 3 features. The first one is it's potentially costly to buy. They don't have to be costly to buy, but in general terms, whether it's because you're buying in bulk or because individually they're quite pricey, there's a sum of money that you need to have set aside ready to be able to buy them. The second thing that for me is incredibly important about an investment crop is that they're difficult to replace without investing more money in the same thing. Now, there's one thing on my list that you may question this term for, but what I'm going to say is that that particular crop may or may not be replaceable in time, but that time is likely to be the following season. So it's too late to reap the rewards. It's too late to sell them to your customers in the next season or the season after. And that's why it still sits in my investment crop kind of budget. The third thing is that investment crops are potentially highly profitable. They're potentially highly profitable either because of the balance of supply and demand, So there aren't many people growing it, but it's really, really popular. Or because they help your season to get off to a really good start or a really good end. Okay, so those are my 3 criteria. Number 1, costly to invest in. Number 2, difficult to replace. Number 3, highly profitable, mainly because of the balance of supply and demand. So it's a sort of crop that flower farmers think twice about buying. Obviously, on a different scale, but it's not much different to buying a house. Ridiculous? No, I'm never ridiculous. That's not true, actually. I'm often ridiculous. However, I really don't think it is, because it's about proportion and it's about scale. So you will often spend more money in one go on an investment crop than you will on other plants or seeds. You will often reinvest to either grow that offering in an investment crop year on year, or you'll invest or reinvest in your crop so that you can maintain its health and productivity. So for those of you who are homeowners, perhaps that analogy now makes a bit more sense, because, when you buy a house, you don't just buy the house and you're done, sadly. You have to, if you buy a 1-bedroom house with a bit of space on the side and you, get married, or you decide to work from home, or you have a child, you might need a second room, and that adding to your investment crop is the same as building an extension. Or in terms of maintenance and investment, sadly, houses go wrong. So they need new guttering, new roofs, new wiring, decorating, furnishing, and all those things. And those are the same as the maintenance costs that we have for our crops, that I see as being an investment. And whilst we do some of those things for everything else, I would argue that in reality, the time and effort that you put into maintaining an investment crop is probably lower than the time and effort that you put into maintaining annuals. Whew, I love to be a bit controversial, but you can ponder that in your own time. Okay, so what do I consider to be an investment crop? Investment crops are things like trees and foliage, shrubs, roses, tulips, ranunculus, narcissi. I prefer the word daffodil, frankly. There's an out posh about me, nowt. I've been in Yorkshire too long when I start saying nowt. Anyway, alliums. I have a question mark by alliums because I still haven't decided how much I love them. I feel like they're really useful for about a week, but in that week I can't do without them. I know that that's me and my flower farming practice, and I know that other people love them. But that I still think that they're an investment crop. So, this week we're announcing courses for some of these: roses, tulips, ranunculus, and anemone. I know that it's not possible for all of you, in the same way that it wasn't possible for us, to invest in all of these investment crops in one season. I also know that until you're working full-time in your business, it can be really difficult to invest and properly care for more than one investment crop at a time. And I think there's 2 parts to that, so I'm going to say it again. It's difficult to invest, so to scrape together the cash, and then to properly care for whatever you've invested in. And so I would strongly encourage you, when you're thinking in particular about trees, foliage, shrubs, roses, less so narcissi, but when you're thinking about those things, to choose your poison and work with one at a time, because there's no point investing money in buying them, investing time in getting them happily planted, and then moving on to the next so quickly that you don't have time to look after them. And by the end of the year, actually half of them are dead. Okay? So focus and choose your poison. All right, so I segued ever so slightly. That was not in my notes. Anthony will be slightly cross because we do actually spend a bit of time putting these notes together. But anyway, I think it's important to add, and we'll again see if Anthony agrees with me and leaves it in. Why did I share that last bit? I shared that last bit because it's a mistake that Anthony and I have made at Silver Grey Foliage. We have been so excited and so keen to grow our business that at times we have scraped together the cash and invested in 2 or 3 crops, but only really been able to care for 1.5. 2's probably pushing it, and so we have lost crops and we've wasted money and we've wasted time and energy and effort. It's a big learning point for us that if we're going to invest, try and invest in one thing at a time and care for it well and do it properly so that we can reap the rewards from that, rather than investing in too much too quickly and then losing out. All right, so here are my actual thoughts and tips that I'm supposed to be sharing today. In reality, I guess these are 3 things that I really want you to consider in this order, because I think they'll help to focus your mind and focus your intentions and focus your saving and focus your spending of hard-earned money. I've used that M word quite a few times today, but I do think it's really important, and I don't really understand why flower farmers are so bashful about talking about it, because frankly, if you're growing at scale or if you're wanting to grow a flower farming business, then the intention is to earn money to pay for stuff. Now that stuff might be your lifestyle, or that stuff might be a member of staff around the house, or it might be that stuff is a charity, but we're still after money, because much as I would love it not to, that is an essential in life. All right, first top tip. It's more of a question, actually. The first question: are you in or intending to be in a long-term flower farming business? Why do I ask that question? Well, if you are not intending to extend your flower farming practice, then I would question whether investing in large numbers of any of these is valuable. And the reason I say large numbers is because 1 or 2 rose shrubs isn't enough. It will make for 1 or 2 gorgeous bouquets, but that's all. If your flower farming practice is, for example, based around the concept of growing enough to make bunches and bouquets and to do smaller DIY weddings, then you still need a good 5 to 10 roses of a similar colour and shade to be able to produce a wedding in June with roses as a focal flower. Now, like many of you, I never promise a rose. I never promise anything, to be honest, apart from flowers and foliage, because I don't know what's going to be looking best. But as a focal flower in June, roses are really useful. And if they're really useful, then you need to have enough of them to not be frustrated by the work that you're wanting to put out. So I'm asking the question, are you intending to be in a long-term flower farming business? Because if you are, again, I'm going to turn you to that point of investing in enough of each of these investment plans to make your work easy for you. All right, point number 2. Common things are common. Now, in medicine, we talked a lot about this. In particular, we talk about horses and zebras. So horses in Leeds are more common than zebras. Now, you might laugh, but we don't even have a zoo in Leeds. So this really is true. Now, I'm not a vet, so I'm going to keep this analogy really, really basic. But here's the point. Horses are easier to acquire than zebras. They are also, in general, cheaper, and reproducing them is a well understood and easily repeated process. They're also in surprisingly high demand considering how expensive they are to look after and keep. And time consuming too, because people love their horses. Okay? So my equivalent of a horse in flower farming investment crop terms would be something like Viburnum opulus or hellebore. Now, in reasonable quantities at wholesale, you can get both of these for between £2 and £6, including VAT. That's sterling in a 9cm pot, making both crops a modest investment when compared to something like roses or eucalyptus that start at around £10 and go up to way more, as I'm sure you're aware. Now, both Viburnum opulus and hellebore are extremely popular. They're in high demand in their season. Both command a consistently high price, retail and wholesale. Both are easy to propagate in different ways, but they're both pretty simple to crack on with. And a bit like owning a pony, neither ever go out of fashion. I mean, I've never wanted a pony, but as far as I can work out, for every generation there is some kind of children's literature, or fiction mainly, but not always, that is based around the concept of wanting to own a horse. It never goes out of fashion. So, the final thing to be mindful of is that both need time and patience to deliver true abundance. So they need to be in the ground, loved and looked after. And yes, you can cut from them relatively quickly. And my approach to cutting is probably somewhat different to other people's, but I would suggest you can cut from them really quickly. But to be able to get enough stems, multiple stems, an abundance of stems, it takes time, like 1, 2, 3 years before you're really reaping the rewards of having planted those crops. So that investment isn't just in terms of money, it's time and years and patience. The third tip or thought I'd like you to consider is when it comes to crops that are notorious for presenting challenges. For example, ranunculus. Start small and cheap. Why? Well, my advice is that you develop your understanding and your confidence at growing them first. Because once your technique is good and strong and you understand how to make these crops work for you, you can scale up really quickly. And by doing it that way, you haven't spent lots of money, you haven't wasted lots of money getting it wrong so that you can get it right. So a trial of 20 to 30 ranunculus is absolutely enough, and it's significantly cheaper than buying 50 to 100 or 100 to 200 or 200 to 500, albeit that may well be where you want to get. Terrible syntax. Albeit that may be where you want to get to, but be patient. Start small, understand what you're working with, learn how to get it right, and then scale up. Okay. Tip or thought number 4. Concentrate on one area of the season at a time. So one area of your growing season at a time. So spring has absolutely been my focus for a while, and spring is hard to nail. We all know this. The weather is unpredictable. The crops that perform year in and year out are expensive, and they're a real investment. And so we have steadily invested in more and more and more over the years. The fact that we're able to start in February and produce hundreds of stems, thousands of stems every week isn't an accident. It has taken 5 years of investment, 5 years of propagating, 5 years of learning from our mistakes, and we're still not there. I think we've got a pretty convincing kind of spring program as flower farming goes, but we're definitely not there. There are growers that I aim to emulate in my own way and be closer to in terms of our ability to produce high quality flowers and foliage at that difficult time of the year. And it will take another 3 to 5 years to be anywhere near close to that, and that's okay. Am I going to focus purely on spring for all that time? Well, no. Some seasons I might focus on autumn or winter, but the key thing is that my attention isn't being spread too thin. And by not spreading my attention too thin, again, I'm able to focus on getting what we do invest in right, so that once it's settled and loved and looked after and happy, I can then move on. All right, finally, in flower farming, patience and a keen eye really do reap rewards. All plants are becoming increasingly costly to buy in ones or twos, never mind in bulk. And so when you're thinking about investing in long-term crops, thinking about who you know and what they have in their gardens. Because a clump from a friend, a neighbour, a follower, or just passing through can really go a very, very long way when you've honed your propagating skills. Okay, so a clump as a starting point. We started our perennial phlox. We have mainly white. We have a little bit of pink, but mainly white. In our second year of flower farming, we were given 4 clumps by a neighbour. Now, those 4 clumps, 4 years on, are about 7 metres worth of phlox. Like, that's a lot of phlox. It's a bit of patience, a bit of time dividing, and a bit of time allowing them to settle in and get really happy in their environment. And they produce for us year on year on year. Okay? So investing doesn't necessarily mean spending a lot of time and or money buying things. Sometimes it means swapping a bouquet, a wreath, a bottle of wine for something that your neighbour or best mate has that you would really like to grow more of for your customers. Okay, that's enough from me for today. It is the end of June. This is a big week for us at Silver Grey Foliage, and we hope for you too. We would love to work with you this autumn, winter, and in spring of next year. We would love to help you to get on and grow. We would love to help you really hone your flower farming practice, to really make a good plan, to really understand those tricky areas and investment crops so that your flower farming business becomes more profitable for you and for your family and for whatever you intend your funds to do in time. If you'd like to join us, keep an eye out on our social media this week, keep an eye out on our website this week, keep an eye on your emails if you've signed up to the newsletter. Remember, it's a double click, so check for the second email or the confirmation email in your inbox. I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful week, and I'll be back next Monday with another episode about flower farming practice here at Mulch. Rebecca.
Thank you for listening to Mulch. I hope that you found it useful. To find the show notes, head back to our website where you'll find links to all the things that I've been talking about in today's episode. If you're on Instagram, you can find us at Silver Grey Foliage. I would appreciate it so much if you were able to share this episode in your Instagram stories. And if you are able to leave a review, it really will help more people to get on and grow. I'll be back with you next Monday to talk about more flower farming in practice. Rebecca.